Thank you, Matt. As Matt says, I'm Alistair Buck. I'm the Director of Consulting at Cavell. They've let me out of the back office to come and talk to you lot, out of the all the spreadsheets. So this is our second panel. This is going to be very exciting. Matt has already talked to you a little bit about what Cavell think in terms of the margin dilemma. He talked a little bit about what he thinks it is, some of our enterprise research, and some of our thoughts and our solutions. But that is what Cavell think. What we're here today is we've got these three great gentlemen who are going to give real life examples, real examples, real thoughts on this specific problem. But do we have a problem? I ask myself. I did do a poll on, is it Hoover? Where's my thingy? Hoover. I did do a poll, and that poll did say yes. 50% of the people on that poll did say they had a margin problem. So everybody is, at the right place. So today we are going to do a Slido. So who has got, who's downloaded the app? Anybody got one of these? Anybody got one of these? It's on the back of this, We should also have, if we can turn it on now. Yes, is it turned on? There's a QR code in the top left-hand corner. Okay, if you zap that, you can answer the question at the top, which is, how do you profit from PSTN services and collaboration platforms? Which product or services are you going to push the most to increase margin? So we'll come back to that at the end. So if we go back to the, if we can go back to the title slide, that would be amazing. So we will do Q&A at the end. So to get us started, let's have some introductions. So please, to the illustrious panel, please introduce yourself, where you're from, favourite hobby, all those sort of things, and crack on.
Is this on? How's it now?
Yeah, I think we can hear you now.
Thanks, Alistair. William Rubio, Chief Revenue Officer at Call Tower. I think most of you know what we do here in the room, but really focused around unified communications and contact center as a service.
Yeah, Matt Seaman, CEO of Nuso. We provide services throughout North America and EMEA, primarily, coming soon to an APAC near you. And also just completed a transaction for CCAS, and we're a full stack provider all the way from network, all the way through high-end applications.
Hi, hello everybody, I'm Rahul. I'm part of the Tata Communications Group. I represent the Global Rapid product, which is our UC portfolio of things. Tata Communications does a lot of things, network, security, IoT, and a lot of things. I come from the UC, or the voice part of the business.
Thank you. So let's get into this now. So I'll go to each of the panelists in turn. So I think the first thing we're going to do is try and frame the problem. So I would like you to, talk about the margin dilemma that you have seen in your company. What have you experienced? How has it impacted you? What's been going on in your business? So give some examples of how this margin dilemma of, how do you profit from selling PSTN services and collaboration platforms? How has this affected you in your own business? So why don't we start with William?
Yeah, well, Alistair, Matt and I were just laughing right now. We wonder on the poll how many vendors were the ones that were going ahead and polling about analytics and call recording and who was putting in their answers on that. So yeah. It's kind of funny. No, look, I think the margin dilemma is something that is not new for us, or for at least the folks that are up here on this panel. It's definitely been around for a few years, and it's not just the margin dilemma, right? But it's also the stickiness of the products that you're selling, right? In a lot of cases, voice or traditional voice has become somewhat a little bit more transactional than anything else, whether you're on Teams, Zoom, Cisco, et cetera, some of the other platforms. So it's really trying to make sure that you can continue to differentiate yourself from a product standpoint, and then also from a support standpoint to really drive that ARPU up to make sure that you can continue to provide the profits and the margins that you need to your shareholders. So I think that there's always that challenge. But I think if you could stick to some of the products that are stickier overall, which all the vendors that we saw and all the vendors we work with, it does really add. That's where the value add to the customers. Customers today, nowadays, with their IT resources are getting stretched thin, right? They have a lot more business owners that they have to work with within their company right now. Marketing and client support and so forth are coming to them, asking them for more tools, and their resources are getting stretched thin. So they really need to work with vendors like us that are up here that can really provide more of a full turnkey solution, which does give us a margin dilemma, but at the same time, the opportunity to really drive more product to those customers as well.
Thank you. Matt, how's it affected you in your business?
Yeah, so it's changed everything about what we've been focusing on over the last 6-7 years. So it's not simply that organic growth and where that actually flows, but also influences our acquisition strategy. So for us, it's not just a matter of partnering with other vendors to be able to add things to our stack to make it more sticky or to increase margins. But in most of our case, we've actually purchased and made acquisitions that add IP, our own intellectual property, to the stack. That way we are able to achieve significantly higher margins with each of the elements that we're actually driving out to customers and be able to push that in place. When you're talking about the collaboration enablement market specifically, we've got a couple of ways, some concrete examples in our relationship with Zoom on the provider exchange side, and being able to deploy, for example, a recording solution that had to be deployed with in the Middle East that required the recordings to actually be stored locally. Our environment allows you to do that and be able to store them wherever the data sovereignty requirements happen to be and be able to support that. So that was a margin enhancement in that experience. And then on the Microsoft side, really twofold. One, our Operator Connect environment and the fact that we own our own network infrastructure, so the margin there is much better than if simply reselling. And then the second is we just completed a transaction for T-Metrics, which is a enterprise contact center, and especially in the U.S. federal space. But just were able to complete a UK our first sale post-transaction actually was in the UK to actually deliver a Teams-related direct routing solution specifically into that environment. So that's two concrete examples of being able to take that IP and actually push it into the market.
Yeah, so I think the margin problem is nothing new. I think more than a decade or 2 decades has been margin for a telco has been always elusive, right? I think fundamentally we as a company are looking at the PSTN voice minute as 2 components, right? I think it's not just a minute anymore, right? To ability to call, but it is, I think, a very simplified identity, right? The number itself is very powerful, and I think most businesses when we talk to don't want to let go of their numbers, right? And I think this is how the identity ties into a Zoom or a Microsoft, where they tie in all the data and the person, what he speaks, and all these things together. So the identity piece is very important and very critical to us. Over the years, we have seen billions of minutes move out of our platform because they have died down, but we haven't seen that accelerated degrowth on identity. People are still wanting to retain their number. The platforms move, but the identity remains the same, right? I think this is a very critical point as we look at it, and as a result of which, when we bring a work with any platform, what's important to us is that we conserve that identity and the customer is able to take that identity as he progresses with the platform. And this is a cornerstone of what we think, right? And then we obviously partner with a lot of Microsoft, be it Zoom, be it NICE, or be it any other platform providers, and we allow the customers to take this identity. Now, at least in the UC space, this identity has become very commoditized. At least the internal identity is very easily manageable. But on the CX side, the minutes the identity is still there. I think voice still continues to be a very strong way, a very powerful way of reaching a customer or a customer reaching back. So minutes on the CCaaS sides, or at least there are still money to be made there, but at least on UC side, we have 2 challenges. Then obviously we look at value-added services and we attend events like Cavell to see what value-added services are there in the market.
Okay, so you gave a few examples already, but let's just get back to, I'll start with yourself, William. So what, I know, not wanting to, talk any confidential numbers, but, what is your top, what are the top thing do you use? What top product or what top commercial model are you now implementing to get over this margin problem of when you're selling with the collaboration platforms? Is there any secret sauce you can share with the audience? So maybe just go into maybe a couple of specifics again on which products, any commercial model changes, what secret sauce.
Are we all under NDA here that we can?
Yeah, well, I'm going around and get everybody signed up.
I want to hear your
lunch.
secret sauce. Yeah. I'm just saying.
Signed up at lunch.
So, one of them, and Matt hit on this earlier, is I think one of the secret sauce is when you look at distribution, right, how you go to market. I think the traditional ways that we've been going to market have to change. I think we've all evolved, that you see the convergence of voice and really traditional IT kind of coming together. So you have a lot more players going into the voice space, and you have a lot of the voice players that are going into other parts like security, right, that happen to be a little different. From our standpoint, specifically more outside of go-to-market and channel distribution, it's really what we call our Call Tower Connect platform. Which is basically the brains behind what we do. So we, us three were up here and we were talking about all these different sticky solutions that we could add to the product, whether it's call recording or analytics and so forth. But how do you make it work? How do you make it integrate that it becomes ease of use for the administrators to go ahead and administer, and then also for the end users to actually go ahead and use on a daily basis? And that's one thing that we put a lot of R&D into, is to our Connect platform, to make sure that it has those API integrations to make it seamlessly for the administrators to manage. And then even from a standpoint of our partners, how to bill it and how to make sure that we're capturing, whether it be CDRs and so forth, and make sure that we could collect the profit for that to, again, help that margin dilemma.
To do a much better job in other areas.
Exactly.
Yeah. Matt, what's your secret sauce here to get over this problem without having to sign an NDA throughout the whole?
Yeah, in a way, I violently agree with William. The reality is that what we call our Nuso.io platform is probably the most valuable piece of the intellectual property we have in the organization, because it allows us to take multiple elements, everything from CPaaS to be able to actually add services on a seat without having to pick up the phone and call someone and say how. A partner or a customer are able to self-service and really experience a frictionless workflow, so that they're able to take what they need today and deploy it to their service, not have to wait, not have to consult, not have to work through challenges, and be able to get that up and running right away. And for some reason, it was the wrong thing for them to select, they can then deselect it as well and be able to provide that solution all the way through. So one of the biggest challenges, though, is that every time we buy another platform, we have to integrate that into that environment and be able to make it as frictionless as we can to then provide that experience that our resellers and our partners have certainly begun to understand. In another important part, too, is, again, the distribution comment about the channel and who you have as your partners. It's really important to think about how those partners do consume services, and being able to actually do that in a meaningful way and be able to have access to the analytics necessary to be able to understand what their customers actually need, so that they can have those upsell opportunities. There was a conversation, Rich was talking about from Zoom, about the ability to be able to have some AI to be able to understand that. We do something similar already on our existing platform to be able to cross different services to be able to pull that together. So it's that glue, the mediation layer, whatever you want to call it, but it's the OSS BSS, and making sure that it actually is able to integrate all of those elements and be able to actually flow it through. If you're buying someone else's, and there are a lot of folks that maybe have focused on the BroadSoft platform, and there are a lot of different platforms that were made for the BroadSoft space. We didn't. We started off in the old Metaswitch world, and so we had to build our own, because it didn't exist from another vendor, and that was a blessing in disguise and helped us to build the rest of everything else we had going forward.
Thank you. And at the end, how do you see? And also, please do be controversial. Is PSTN minutes dead? Are there all those old ways of making money? Are they just legacy now, and it's all about something else. Be controversial. Come on, get this audience excited.
I mean, it's to your point. I think PSTN is tricky in different markets, right? I think with Tatacom, at least, we are very cautious on which markets we enter. I think recently we launched Operator Connect in India, and I think this is a market that was significantly large. It involved huge investments in terms of compliance and all the other things. But these are conscious decisions that we are making. I think just adding a country is not going to give you a differentiated value, because I think in the marketplace there are going to be enough players who will give you that delta. So it is very important, at least from us point of view, to be very conscious about what we are adding, right? And to build the entire business story or the business case, and the problem should be large enough to really make it meaningful. I think the second point to add, I think the more, I know a lot of services are now being delivered in a very frictionless way, but it is very important for us at least to be close to the business problem that is the customer facing. And that is where we layer in our managed services or professional services around it, right? The more closer we are to the customer, to the dialogue and understanding the problem statement, I think the more we will make our margins there, right? I mean, since we operated with large enterprises, I think this is the dialogue we fundamentally try to have. Since we are not very active in the SMB space, we talk to large enterprises. We spend a lot of time with them to understand what's their problem, what is the business outcome there. It could be a Microsoft situation or a Cisco situation, but I mean, the total TCO, that is what they're trying to achieve, be it licensing problem or whatever around it, right? I think we look at that problem statement and then drive the margin where we can add value to the customer. I think these two things are something that we're doing. There is no secret sauce, unfortunately. I think we have to look at every stone. We have to look at every stone and see there's something margin under it.
There's the controversy.
Right, we're going to go back to the people. Let's see what the people say. Right, what is our Slido saying? What is going to be the product or the service you're going to push the most to increase margin? So we'll everyone look at the screen. Yeah, I think managed services is coming out fairly strong, isn't it? Call recording, CCaaS. Oh, I think more people are adding in. FMC is up the top, but not very big. Okay, so it is settling down on call recording.
It is
managed
interesting
services.
That AI is very small.
Oh, AI's got to be bigger than that. Come on, AI. Come on, AI. Get up. No, it's still, yeah. Okay, we'll let that churn away. Let's go. We've got 6 odd minutes. I'd like to do a bit of a Q&A if anybody's got any questions. But I would like to just ask my last question. And I call this, it's something we love in consulting, a bit of blue sky thinking, What's your blue sky thinking in this topic? In terms of futures, what alternative ways can you think of in getting over this margin dilemma? You must have some weird and wonderful ideas and examples of how you might get around this problem in a slightly different way. William, come on.
Well, I'll give a little controversy, I think, to start off, right? And I don't know if this might be a good poll for next time, is do people actually think that voice is dead, right? I mean, I think coming out of COVID, that was a big question that a lot of folks were asking. And this is my opinion, I know the other panelists, but I think it's the opposite. I think voice is going to continue to increase, right? We're seeing that even though, let's say, with the use of AI within a contact center solution, you're still physically picking up a phone and you're calling into an AI system to get you the information that you need. So the minutes, right, as far as you're seeing, even though consumption overall per user might go down, you're starting to see that it's more accessible on a global level. So you're starting to see just the overall volume go up. At least that's what we're seeing in a lot of cases on our end. So I think when you start to look at different things like that, it's how could you position yourself, whether it be by expanding your territory, right, by going more global or not, and then what else could you layer within that connection, within that SIP trunk, right, or that pipe they have. AI, managed services, everything that's up there, I think it's good. I think the other part is when you look at what we've all done, and if you take Zoom, Cisco, and Microsoft, kind of the platform that, or the meeting that they had, or the session, you start to look at what they're doing overall on a global level and enabling partners like us to really bring those value-added services to really go ahead and just drive that change overall. So I think that the cloud migration is still there. There's, 50 million, I think, users that those folks actually have overall when you look at what they have from a licensing standpoint. And I think there's about 420 million in the cloud. So there's still a big delta, right, of available that's actually out there to go ahead and capture. So I think there's still a big opportunity.
Thank you. News alert. FMC has come up on the list. Lee Essex from Tango must be pressing a button loads of times.
No
Where is he? He must be pressing it lots of times. Yep. CCAS is coming through. AI is making an appearance. Okay, so we just let's move on to our Matt, our next. Yeah. What's your thinking for the future? Your bit of blue sky thinking on this topic?
Yeah, so I'm going to disagree with William on one area, which is that it's not voice, but it's interaction. And so interactions are increasing. We're actually seeing, we have a full carrier network with billions of calls a month that actually flow. We see volumes continually decline over time. We're seeing interaction, though, begin to increase. So we're seeing total amount of conversational minutes increase on a per call basis. So it's interesting how that interaction is starting to change. We've invested in call recording that is not just call recording, but is complete for all interactions. So everything that happens from even on the telemetry side and metadata side, to be able to do that interaction, to be able to determine whether or not there's the actual CDR came in, did it really get recorded as it moved through and was transferred around and then moved into a Teams or a Zoom call, and be able to function from that perspective. So it's the interaction piece is an important element that we see has increased. It's very strange. The pandemic, where we all had to close ourselves off, the collaboration platforms exploded, and the reality is the interaction, we moved forward about 15 years faster than what the expected growth rate was going to be in that window. If all of us at some point saw a BT or an AT&T video phone back in 1987, and we thought it was going to be the thing that was going to come about, and it's finally started to actually move. We're seeing more video minutes actually now being run through desktop and video recordings, as we're seeing, and continuing to increase. So, and just if you think about the amount of times 3 or 4 years ago that you jump on a collaboration meeting and 3/4 of the folks would actually have their cameras off. That's changing, and it's continuing to change. And I remember at Cavell, there used to always be questions about whether or not, hey, do people really turn their cameras on? Is this really going to be a thing going forward? And yeah, it really is. So it's about building applications that actually help to monetize, for us service providers, monetize those interactions.
Thank you. And right at the end, my good fellow.
Yeah. So, I know we have a lot of options on the screen, and that's probably going to be true for every one of us at some levels. But I think one thing to look at it is whatever minutes are left on the network now are critical minutes, right? They are probably CCAS, customer experience minutes, or they are senior people calling, right? These are critical minutes, and every interaction voice minute has a very high value. And in that space, I think, fraud and deepfake are going to create a lot of challenges for us, right? And I think as a PSTN operator in this space, how we are able to differentiate in that space and, is going to be critical, and that's probably going to, set some companies apart if they're able to go and put something really valuable in front of the customer.
Okay. Going to come back to the people again. Has anybody got a question for the panel on this topic? A couple over here. Do you have anybody with a microphone, or shall I run up?
Between the chairs.
Oh, didn't see it.
Well, if you could turn that mic on, thank you. There's just a gentleman here, so a question for the panel.
Yeah, it's really good that you're talking about these positive new income streams, I guess, that can solve the margin dilemma. But the other one is overheads. So, we've been through probably an extensive roll-up period for the last 5 or 6 years. You've got service providers that have been buying other service providers, and there'll be many people that are running 10 different UC platforms. So what's going to happen about that? Is the margin dilemma going to actually force people to make decisions around what platforms they consolidate on, finally?
Do you want to take that and have a go?
I got one of our guys here in the audience who's our VP, a senior VP of technology. He'll laugh at this, but we're always in constant migration, is what we kind of say of platforms overall. And I think that that's something you have to take into account in your roadmap, right? Which platforms you're going to continue to support based on the user consumption, based on your margins that you have, and also based on the technology stack that that particular platform also has for the future, right? If you know they're 2 or 3 or 5 years out. So I think it's not a simple answer. I think it's really a consolidation or a decision based on all those different components, and probably a lot more that I'm forgetting. But those are kind of key decisions that have to be made based on, you know, what those answers are.
Yeah, we're deprioritizing call control, honestly, as an investment. So if you have 3 or 4 systems in your environment, you deprioritize that because you're overlaying the customer experience applications on top of it. I'm just simply pushing RTP around. I don't care whether or not it's on my Meta. I don't care if it's on a NetSapiens. Hopefully nobody's here from NetSapiens. But I don't care what it happens to be sitting on. And being able to push it around, because it's all of the features above it are what actually is driving sales today. It's not the fact that there's the UCaaS seat is being pushed around.
We got a second question over here.
That's actually a great segue into the question I want to ask, and that question is, what margins are you even after? So in a communication service provider, you have a challenge that PSTN is high volume but incredibly low margin. As a SaaS provider, it's your application solutions, your vertical integrations that have a higher margin revenue return. And to an investor, the challenge becomes PSTN is a large contribution from a revenue, but it's incredibly low margin versus what investors look at, which is high margin returns where all of your PSTN minutes pull you down. How does that factor into your dilemma that you look at?
Yeah, so we provide a significant amount of wholesale traffic throughout the US and Europe. And in those markets, we made an acquisition at the end of 21, and our termination minutes were an extraordinary number that drug my margins through the floor when we started actually working on it. What we did instead is we made a conscious decision to go ahead, and we're at about 40% of the volume we were in January of 22, but our actual product dollars, the margin dollars related to that is exactly the same. And so throughout the period, we made choices that volume was not important. We decided to go ahead and divorce ourselves from that. And so overall, as far as what kind of margins, I mean, if you're not in the mid 80s before you end up paying any partner commissions, then you're probably in the wrong business.
Yeah, I think there's also the other part about the investor dilemma, which might be another good topic to have here at one point, because there's been an education, right, when you're looking, especially with PEs, and they're looking at what we are as far as service providers, and then looking at a SaaS model, a traditional SaaS model in software, that they're looking at 80 or 90%, you know, overall just for a specific license. And we're looking at 10 or 15 different solutions, or bundling, right, as some people say, together, and trying to look at a margin. Definitely, Matt's right. It definitely has, and when you're looking at your core product, at least from what you're going to start with, trying to look at something in that 70 or 80% margin, understanding that some of these other add-on services are going to be less, but the overall combined, you definitely want to make sure that you're, say, you know, north of 50, closer to 60, probably overall.
Yeah, similarly for us, I think the PSTN bit is probably a prerequisite to talk to customers, so that it probably gets us foot in the door, but we are trying to derive margins from the value-added services around it. So as a UC stack, if you look at it whole piece, it'll be healthy, it'll be decent, but if you go component-wise, it will not make sense on some of the components. And that's why talk to the business problem, and if the business problem is large enough, there is enough margin to be made.
Yeah, we look at every product is what mix is defensive and which mix is offensive. So is it a 30% defensive, 70% offensive, or is it 80% defensive because you just have to have it and be able to throw it in the mix to be able to cover the bundle?
Any more questions, please? Another tricky one. Come on. Over there.
Oh, it would be all the way over there.
We want to see Matt running.
Next one on that one.
Yeah.
We want to see Matt running.
The machine around, just in case.
This will probably be the last one. So,
Hi, it's Paul, Call Tower. I haven't set you up, Will, don't worry. Looking at actual revenue per user, talking about margins, understanding that the value-added services, the bolt-ons, the vendors in the room out there can all help grow margin. Listening to Microsoft, Zoom, and WebEx, they're constantly evolving their technologies. How much of a threat are those three platforms to the vendors in the room? And what can they do to stay ahead of the game so Microsoft don't build out their value-added services and basically take them out of the game?
I don't think we are in a state we are in a constant running state. I don't think today we'll have a bunch of vendor partners. Tomorrow there'll be more problems. There'll be another set of partners. So I think, and we are conscious that Microsoft is going to chip along them and going to take some of this natively to some of the features will go back into natively Teams, or Cisco will do this, right? So we are looking at it as a cycle, as constantly look at what is there, what can be value added, what is really solving the challenges for some of our businesses, and keep evolving, right? And then build our modular framework or build our base layer such that we can plug and play anything that it makes sense at that point of time and adapt.
Yeah, part of it is the distribution network that you already have as a service provider. If you're a pure play Microsoft reseller, you're going to have just what you're going to be able to have from a license perspective, plus the professional services, and then move through. In a telecom environment where it's attached, you end up having more opportunity as a reseller and a partner to actually make more money. And so there's always going to be a pull for that drive to be able to there's always going to be a demand in the marketplace for that shim to be in there, which is that distribution partner and those folks. So I think that's a key differentiator to have that continue to be in play. Is there always a risk? Sure, there's always a risk. But again, I think as William mentioned, as far as the 400 and some million UCaaS seats versus the 50 or so that are currently consumed by the three majors, and that's a huge delta in between. And there's still most of Southern Europe has not made a digital transition. Most of the rest of Middle East and Africa have not made that transition. So there's another billion users over the next 10 years that we all need to service. And it's a question of how much is actually going to be taken up by the three versus the others.
Yeah, I think there is always that risk, like Matt said, and that concern. But we all had that same risk, right? When Microsoft, when Zoom and Cisco all came out with cloud calling, right? We were all sitting there saying, are we going to have a company to function, right? And what we did is we took it and we just kind of built on the core foundation that they provide. But I think when you look at the risk factor that those key providers provide out there for us, you got to then look at what are the opportunities, right? I think when they were up here earlier on the panel, one of the things that they all mentioned was about frontline workers, which there's a big exposure to frontline workers right now that no one's really focusing on. Everyone's worried about the user in the office, right? Everyone's worried about that regular worker. What about the front line that makes up millions and millions upon opportunity for us to go ahead and go out there? So for every time that there's a risk, there's another opportunity that you have to take advantage of, and you got to make sure that you keep evolving as an organization to stay relevant.
Thank you. Thank you. So just to go back to the people again, it looks like managed services and CCaaS has won, I think, on our poll. So I think we've got to wrap up now because we're up to time. So firstly, I'd like to thank everybody who got involved in Slido. That was a good bit of fun. And I also like to thank the panel for some very insightful comments on this topic area. And thank you for all the audience for listening. Thank you.
Thanks very much.